Hi everybody, this is Liam Martin from the internet, and today I have a good friend of mine, Alex, who is the founder of SaaStock. And hopefully if you're listening and or watching this right now, we're actually trying a bit of an experiment. So we're doing the YouTube video, which will probably have like a short version of what we're going to be talking about, the highlights reel. And if you want the full conversation, you got to go check out the Running Remote podcast, which probably Fiona will link somewhere up here. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you should check out the YouTube channel too. Get yourself on both sides of it. But Alex, thank you very much for hanging out in the office with us today. Yeah. I know it's a really cold Canadian day for you, and this is your first experience in Canada, so kind of apologize.
You can't apologise for the weather. I mean, I should have been better prepared. My feet are a little bit wet, so yeah. I made bad choices on the footwear.
Yeah, Alex went in with running shoes, and he doesn't understand that you got to use like the boots, particularly in the Canadian winters. But you're here for SaaS North, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I'm here for SaaS North, first time in Canada, first time at SaaS North. Speaking of SaaS North tomorrow, we're going head to head in competing on the agenda in time slots, but I've got a panel. We're talking about going global, international, taking your SaaS overseas.
Yep.
So excited for that and to connect with a lot of Canadian SaaS friends like yourself, and we get a lot of Canadians within the SaaS startup ecosystem coming over to Dublin for SaaStock for our conference.
So for people that don't know, could you describe SaaStock, how it started? You've been doing it for 3 years, and the growth has been absolutely amazing over those last 3 years. I think I remember hearing about it probably year one, and people saying, "Hey, I'm going down to Dublin for a SaaS conference," and I said, "Dublin? What? Okay, sure, let's go ahead." But it was very interesting how it kind of came about and where it is right now. So if you could speak a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure. So I mean, SaaStock is a conference for SaaS entrepreneurs, execs that want to come together, learn how to build better, bigger SaaS companies. It started back in 2015. I was running a blog, SaaScribe. I was doing this. I was working full time as a sales exec. And I was just wanted to do something like push myself to do something like different. I'd never written a blog in my life.
Yep.
I was like, why don't I write a blog? What would it be about? I chose SaaS because I was really getting interested into the space in a kind of like geeky way.
And were you a sales rep for a SaaS business?
Yeah, it was enterprise software.
Okay.
That enabled SaaS applications. So it enabled like telcos and ISPs to sell SaaS applications.
Got it.
And get away from like the traditional like telco services and just being reliant on that sort of stream of revenue. And so I started to see companies like Dropbox, Box, Slack, even like a couple of years ago, like spring up, and it really kind of piqued my interest. So I said, why don't I read more about this, and then why don't I write about it? I mean, the funny thing was actually I was going to swear there, but subtle about SaaS, and I'm writing about it, right?
Right.
So obviously, what I was writing about couldn't have been that great, but it actually was a real kind of learning process for me. As I was putting not necessarily pen to paper, but typing and just writing anything about SaaS at the time without a real direction. Just enabled me to just learn more about the market and sort of push myself. And so we had SaaScribe initially, and I realised actually I probably wasn't the best writer, straight away. So could I rope in some other people, some smart people, smarter than me, to help contribute to the content? Because I thought the idea of like a non-vendor, non-biased blog around the SaaS industry, around sales and marketing, customer success. If it wasn't a VC that had a bias towards portfolio companies or their deal flow, or a vendor, that was kind of looking at it as a funnel for their business. But so I thought this was a neutral community voice, and actually just reached out to a bunch of people across the world. A lot of freelance content marketers and specialists, within their respective fields, and everybody, like surprisingly. And I think this is something quite true about SaaS, like to this day, like really wanted to like share and contribute, to this kind of ecosystem. It's a real kind of special kind of, I think, people that are building and running SaaS businesses. Mm-hmm. So they gave up their time to write content for SaaScribe, and all of a sudden like within a few months, we had about 30,000 sort of visitors per month to the blog.
Wow.
Which was good. And I thought, okay, why don't I do a podcast as well?
Yeah.
Never done a podcast in my life, and I think just had a kid at the time, so it was zero sleep. And there was me like in my bedroom, had the kid like downstairs, crying, and I'm on a Skype call recording it, with Steady FD on a Friday night at 9 p.m. after like 2 cans of Red Bull to stay awake, not understanding a word that he's talking about because I've never really run a SaaS business.
Right.
But I was just there, just like pushing myself because I felt like there was just something there, and I was like just interested in what I was doing, but I was probably not doing a great job at it. But even at that point, it just resonated with the industry. And that just enabled me, I kept doing that, and that just enabled me to connect with like people in the SaaS community, like Nick Franklin, like yourself, but at a later stage. Then we were just kind of talking, and it's like, well, I had actually no idea where SaaScribe and the podcast was going at that point. We thought, wasn't it a shame that there wasn't a SaaS conference in Europe? And a lot of people just said, why don't you do that, right? Because you're doing the blog and you're doing the podcast and you're building this community. But I was like, yeah, I really like the idea, but I've never run a conference before. So you sort of read that you need some experience or passion about if you're going to build a startup, right? I didn't have the experience, but I thought I had the passion. I wasn't necessarily sure. What I had was the passion, the drive to actually start my own business, like finally. And I kind of just saw it. This was the logical progression of what I was doing with building this audience from the content side of things. So these people that I've been connecting to on the podcast and the blog, these were my first customers, the first sponsors, the first ticket purchasers. These were the people who said that if you do it, we will support it because we want this. So thankful for that, because I quit my job. So we had zero income in the house.
All in.
Yes. I'm going all in, and my fiance, she was like, well, can't you just wait 2 years because like we can't have zero income, right? And I was like, no, like if I wait 2 years, I think it's a familiar story to many people. If I wait 2 years, somebody else is going to do it. I'm not going to have the same motivation. So I end up doing it, and so I was lucky that I built this audience. I was first in the market doing a SaaS conference in Europe. People wanted it, and we had 700 people in the first year.
Wow.
It lost a bit of money, but it was a great experience. I remember the first moment before the conference started, and we're in Dublin, and we had like 40 people, in a room, like from almost 40 different, cities and countries,
right?
And they're all there, just kind of, having a glass of wine, having a beer, just sharing and saying, I'm a founder from Chennai in India, meeting, a founder from Madrid in Spain, never met before, but then, they're peers, and we just enabled it to happen. And that was that was some of the magic I wasn't necessarily expecting, and just putting these people together, high quality kind of peers that are building SaaS businesses that, it's difficult to build, a recurring revenue business, and we just bring everybody together, and it just worked. The first one worked, everybody loved it, and then next year I said, okay, why don't we double it? Like, it was literally, what should we do? Let's double it.
Yeah. Because that sounds just like a logical number.
Yeah, exactly. And we worked for 12 months, and we managed to double it. And it wasn't easy. We were 2.5 people in the first year. Second year we were 7 people within the business. Now we're 20 people.
Wow.
Last year we did we got 1,500 people, and this year we were just shy of 3,000 at the conference. And we actually did 6 conferences this year around Europe, and one in the US. My
co-founder is going to StartCon in Australia, and I believe you have an event right after StartCon.
I think it's the week after.
So he's going to both.
Okay, all right.
Which is just kind of funny. Well, you've got 2 things that I'm very interested in, which is SaaS businesses, and which I've always been interested in for the past 10 years, and then conferences, which is something that we only just started recently, which is why this YouTube channel and podcast exists. But I want to I'd love to be able to talk about all those types of things, but what I'd specifically like to talk about, and what I think our audience would be interested in, is your thoughts for building a SaaS business remotely? Because that's something that you probably aren't the absolute expert on, but I'd love to be able to hear your thoughts about where that breakdown comes from, and I can give you some context for people that are running remote first teams, right? So for remote teams, there's this concept of remote first, which is, yes, you can have an office, yes, you can work out of a co-working space, but fundamentally, you should be able to work wherever you want, whenever you want, and we want to enable people to have that type of capability. So remote first companies, we've had kind of a bad rap over the last 10 years, really how this movement has started. It's been about a decade long, and we've been now trying to get into this space and gain more legitimacy, where you're starting to see companies like Automatic, like Envision, like Hotjar that we were just talking about recently, building out these remote first companies that are actually successful in their SaaS, which is amazing. So where do you see that space right now, and where do you think the future is when you're looking at SaaS businesses today? Because they are, at least in our experience, a very well-represented minority inside of like the SaaS ecosystem.
No, it's a really interesting topic. I'm familiar with a couple of cases specifically, obviously like Hotjar and Envision app, and I mean you mentioned Automatic as well. I think like in my mind, there's a couple of things around why SaaS companies or some SaaS companies are becoming remote businesses, and why many more in the future, I believe, will. I mean, SaaS companies generally, in my view, they're kind of forward-thinking entrepreneurs, companies. The first to adopt new technologies and think about like new ways of work and better company culture and things like that, right? So I think from that perspective, there's this mindset generally in SaaS that they're kind of like open to actually pushing the boundaries of work and making work better, and collaboration and communication better. So from that perspective, it's really interesting to see that actually some companies have been doing it for 10 years, where these are the real like pioneers. I think, and perhaps almost too early, but some of them obviously have made it work. And to where it is now, where it's much more acceptable for remote work, and then fully remote companies that you like. Sometimes I still get surprised a little bit about it. I had Ryan Burke from Envision App on my podcast, I think a year or two ago, and the conversation was, wow, like you're 600 people and you're all remote, and like how do you do it? And he was talking about, well, in the sales team we have virtual happy hours and things like this, and just from the cultural perspective of like how to keep everybody together, which was super interesting and eye-opening for me. So I think first of all, there's that mindset, like the SaaS companies, they're more open to this than perhaps some traditional businesses. That will take them a bit longer. Then we talked earlier about the cost side of things, right? So for the SaaS businesses, costs, well, I think for any business, it's very sensitive kind of area. But when you're looking for like the best talent, or when you're looking also to kind of keep your costs low, then look sort of globally for where that talent is, and rather than, let's say, everybody's in Silicon Valley, where engineers and like anybody is super expensive, and they probably will be with you for like 1 year, right? Why not look further afield, which many companies are doing, and say, well, why can't I hire somebody in Kentucky or in in Buenos Aires, right? When actually this person is probably equally as good, but traditionally we wouldn't be able to hire them, if we're not based in that specific location. So I think it opens up to actually like companies, or some companies still are restricting themselves from actually being able to hire better and cheaper workers, because they have to look and actually, well, we're only going to hire people that are in London, let's say, and we have to then pay a London allowance. That person's going to be 10k more expensive, and actually they might not be necessarily the best person for the job. So you see a lot of SaaS companies. So I know obviously like ChartMogul, or even actually their competitor like Profitwell, who for example, they have I think engineers and colleagues that are in like South America, where actually if they're going to be doing the work and to as good a standard, and actually they're half the price or whatever, so why not? Especially if it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're bootstrapped, if you don't have like 10.
So I think that is the point that I think I want to touch on a little bit more, which is I have a theory that remote business models are by design more efficient at this point. We have enough of an infrastructure where we have tools like Slack, like our tool Time Doctor, like project management tools. We have Asana, we have Jira, we have all of this infrastructure that allows us to be able to communicate very quickly and easily across grand distances. And so right now, the average bootstrapped company is making a remote first decision for primarily through economic decisions. Whereas in comparison to a company that raises $30-40 million, they don't necessarily have to be that 20% more efficient per employee. And so they might say, well, right now we're going to put everyone in one place to be able to scale it at that point. A perfect example is Shopify, which is actually just down the street from us. They have most of their engineers located in their Ottawa offices. However, their entire support and marketing team are distributed. They have 1,400 people that are distributed all over the world. And they've basically recognized that their value add, there is no critical advantage for a support rep being next to another 1,400 support reps. And the average cost is going up for those reps. So it's a lot more cost effective to be able to do that distributed. And Shopify is doing that because they're a public company and they've got to get to profitability. And I think that as a lot of these companies are forced to get into profitability, you probably are going to see a lot more remote businesses in the SaaS space move out into that direction, a little bit less of the free lunches, free MacBook Pro environment that is just kind of exists today, which to me, being a bootstrap business ourselves, it's that's very difficult to be able to compete. We're going to lose against those employees. We're not going to win those employees over because there are better deals right now, because we're in an environment where a whole bunch of people can raise a ton of money and make that happen. We instead are dealing with talent that I would arguably say is as good, but not located in one of those hubs like San Francisco, New York, the Canadian version is Toronto, where you're paying exorbitant costs simply because of the environment that you're in. And you're paying not just a 20% increase in some points, sometimes you're doubling the cost of an employee when you add in all of a dev is $200K in San Francisco, but $80K in New Jersey, as an example, and they're fundamentally the same developer or even better. So generally my theory is that the reason why remote is not as big as it is right now is in SaaS, I believe the majority of it is due to the funding environment that we're currently in, and that when that funding environment changes, because SaaS is relatively new. Everyone is putting their money into it. We discussed earlier about some of the insane valuations that SaaS businesses are getting, which I personally think are way overvalued for the amount of revenue that they're generating. I think once that ends, you're going to see a lot more of those businesses go remote because they are technology forward-thinking founders that are saying, yes, remote first is going to save me money and also is going to make my employees happier. So I'd love to be able to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, definitely agree. I mean, as we've covered the point around the founders being and the companies having this kind of like mentality and sort of ethos, with forward thinking. Obviously, they want the best talent, which is available to them, and that may be in other continents, right? And if that great talent's going to help them, with their business, and they're open to that, well, why not maybe hire this person? This person's in Lisbon. Give it a go. That person works well. Okay, it worked for that. Why don't we try and hire somebody else? If that person comes up and that person's in the US, and I think you might see that kind of like snowball effect as well. if one person kind of works out that's remote and they give it a go, then potentially that might sort of compound, and we might see more remote workers come in, and then they might sort of make this decision about becoming either fully remote or half remote. I think you mentioned earlier about the technology side of things as well. Like if you look at Slack, as a tool, I mean Slack is what 4 years old, 5 years old probably now, right? But Slack really, as one example, there are many other kind of tools, but really empowers companies for this real-time communication, connecting everybody, that you don't need to be in the same office right now. Like before Slack, BS, right, when it was email and phone, and you didn't necessarily have that full online visibility of, is everybody online, what is their status, somebody in a meeting, why are they not responding immediately? I mean, people don't have to, but I guess generally that's kind of the nature. People get slacked and they feel they almost have to kind of respond immediately, but that really empowers, I think, SaaS companies of today to actually have these tools at the disposal to build, I think, fully remote teams. So for us, when we started, there was myself, and then we had 2 people in Ireland. Well, actually, no, it was me, one person in Ireland, one person in Berlin. So we were remote in the first year.
Okay.
And bootstrap business. Obviously, very little revenue.
Spent a whole bunch of money, and then we actually ended up with a loss at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we didn't want to spend money.
You don't want to add a $10,000 a month office on top of those costs.
Which we've got now. Right?
Yes.
and half the people are never at that office, and so you think about, well, why are we spending 10K a month on the office?
I think I have a theory as they connect to these offices, because tech startups always have beautiful offices. I think a component of that is connected to ego. I know my co-founder said, well, if you're going to set up an office, we should get a cool office. We should get an office that's like brick walls and like a really cool loft space, and we should do all this and do all that. And instead,
sounds like our office.
Yeah. So instead, I said, that sounds really stupid. I don't want to spend that much money. I'd rather hire 2 more people. And have them remote. So I think it's and I love these offices. Whenever I end up going into some of these tech startup offices, whenever I travel, usually I'll be able to ping a couple people and someone will kind of take me in for a couple days, which is always fun to kind of just be a fly on the wall inside of another business and see how their business operates. But there are always these beautiful offices, and I think to myself, what's the ROI of that office long term? And I think it boils down to purchasing local talent. You have to compete at a different level to get that local talent, to get those best players inside of the company. So that's kind of my theory on it. But I don't know whether or not SaaS businesses would say something differently, because they're kind of inside of that mindset. So they might not agree with my perspective, but that's at least my perspective from the outside when I look in.
No. I mean, so I guess personally having this identity crisis as to what sort of business are we? Are we a flexi working company? Are we? Do we want to be remote? Because I find the cost of rent for an office exorbitant, and half the company are never actually in the office, right? So what is the point? It also makes me feel like personally, when people aren't in the office and they're choosing the work from home option, which they have because we're flexi working, right?
Yep.
I'm like, well, I'm paying for this office, I really kind of want them to be in the office, but I also want to be, relaxed and have this flexi working policy,
right?
And let them have the option. So I feel like why spend so much on the office when actually probably most people would prefer, I think, in the company to work from home. But part of the challenge we had as well, I think, as we initially hired people with more work experience, not necessarily experience in events, but work experience, so slightly more senior. We've hired quite a few grads this year, and I think that, and so hiring grad and putting them straight into remote work is, I think, challenging.
Sure, they need a little bit of mentorship in the beginning. Yeah, I totally understand that. I think that's another interesting challenge, which is remote internships.
Mm.
Do they even exist?
Yeah.
Maybe they don't. And to be honest with you, we've had mixed success with interns. I don't think we've ever hired a remote intern, but I have worked with people locally to be able to do particular projects, and that's been successful with us. But we've never done it remotely, and I've never seen an example of that really happening successfully in the remote workspace.
I mean, something you don't know about me, but actually I've been working, so my professional career before I started SaaStock, I worked remotely pretty much for all of my professional career. I normally work for US companies that wanted to start sort of like entities within the EMEA region, and they generally just didn't get an office, and we were like a very small team. So like almost my first experience within the working world has been just working remotely. But the first year, like I thought I could wake up at 10 a.m. on a Monday, go to the gym for 2 hours, finish at 4 p.m.
Right.
All right. But actually, like I wasn't being super productive, and like after 6 months, I kind of got pulled up on it.
Yep.
And it took me such a long time to adapt to it. But then after that, I felt like I actually couldn't operate in any other way. I felt I couldn't go into an office environment. I wouldn't enjoy it. Now I do have this office environment, and I'm kind of like, I'm okay with it. But I get interrupted a lot. But yeah, so I've had a long experience, but I think my point was it just took me a long time, that internship, to figure out how to work remotely when you're young.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's something that I know for us, we usually hire people that have some type of experience. And if they don't have any experience, then usually they are connected with someone who does that has that type of experience that we work with long term. Fiona, who's right behind the camera right now, is a perfect example of that. She's someone who did not have any experience, and then I don't think I would be working with Fiona if Fiona was in Chicago. Because it would be a little too difficult for me to really be able to get what I needed. But then after 6 to 12 months, I'm piecing out, going to Mexico for the winter. So Fiona's on her own, for those 2 months that I'm in Mexico, and she'll have to kind of fend for herself in terms of her major KPIs. So I usually ask this question to people in general, and since we haven't done much in terms of video, we have done a bunch of podcasts connected to this, but I usually like to ask this question to a lot of business owners. So I'll give you the kind of context on the question, and then I'll ask you. So I have a magic phone, and this magic phone I'm going to give to you in a minute, and you will only be able to speak on this phone for 1 minute, and the person that you'll be speaking to is yourself 3 years ago when you first started SaaStock. So you have 1 minute on this magic telephone, this time-traveling telephone, right now. What would you say?
Alex, get a mentor straight away.
Okay.
Get somebody who's done this before, and don't try and figure it out yourself. So I think that's certainly like one of the things. Like the first year, I had no experience, made the mistakes of people that had no experience. Just having that mentor, somebody that's been there, done that like before, would have saved me, a lot of time and money. So I think that's definitely one of the things that we would have looked at.
Buy Bitcoin?
Buy Bitcoin, and then no way to sell.
And here's exactly when you need to sell.
I was so late on that. Actually, I had a colleague who, everyone knows somebody who's done well out of Bitcoin. I bought it when it was probably like $10,000
Okay.
And then when it went down to 5, I was like, I'm going to sell that.
Right.
So I ditched it. But I think the main thing is like just having that experience, somebody that's been there before, and now 3 years into it, for the first time, I have a mentor, an advisor, somebody that has grown and scaled and exited the SaaS business, and just getting that person in, even like 1 day a month, and just like, downloading, and it's just so helpful, right? I
completely agree with you. My feeling is a lot of people talk to me about how to start a business, and they all think about business school, and I don't think you can learn business through business school. I think you can only learn it through mentorship, and what you need is to get a collection of mentors that can help you. I usually like one that's way ahead, and then I like one that's 2 to 3 years ahead. So someone that can tell me the real world problems that I need to handle this quarter, and then someone who can focus the long-term vision for me. I usually
it's interesting how the collection of mentors, like having more. I only have one at the moment, but having more, and even I've thought about at this stage it wouldn't be necessary in year one. So I wouldn't be having this conversation with Alex, in 2016. But even like having an executive coach or something like this, I now think about more often, and been speaking to people like Mark Organ at Influitive. I mean, he's running a 150-person company, but and he's a second or third time entrepreneur. But he has an executive coach, right, to help him be a better leader. Now I have a team of 20 people. Like, we're not huge, but I know that I'm a first-time CEO. I can, I'm still learning how to manage 20 people, right? We were talking earlier, about how, when your colleagues come in and how you manage them, and sometimes it's awkward and we still don't know what to do, but you're running a company of 90 people, I'm running one of 20, I'm still learning, I'm still figuring it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that, I have an executive coach, something that I started last year, and on top of my mentors that I just talk to for free, I have a formalized coach that I pay, and especially if you're into, I would probably say that 20 range is probably where I would start. You have to learn not how to be a good marketer, which is what I'm good at, but you need to learn how to lead other marketers to be successful, which is a completely different skill set. You need to understand what marketing is, but you need a completely different skill set of like how to manage people and how to make sure that they're sticking to their KPIs, which is something that was very alien to me even a few years ago. I mean,
for me, like my skill set, my strength, experiences in sales. So, actually when I quit my sales job and went all in on SaaStock, I was like, oh great, I'm leaving the sales world, right? I don't have to sell anything again. And then I was in SaaStock, and like all I'm doing is like selling for the next couple of years, and selling sponsorship. But it didn't feel like I was selling, and it was obviously my company, and we're in the survival mode, at that point, right? So you just had to do it, right? And even after the first SaaStock, mentioned that we lost money. I was like, well, I can't go off on holiday now. I need to like figure this out, and basically, I just sold 130K's worth of sponsorship like within a short space of time. It's like, okay, everything's fine again. Just carry on, right? But for after 2 years, then that's when I sort of realised, well, now I need to step away from owning sales, build that sales engine out and that function, and now I'm sort of helping. The sales team's reporting into me. We have a head of sales. The sales team reports into her, but she reports into me. And the other functions, but now it's more becoming a leader, as you said. So I think that's kind of where we're at.
Cool. Anything that you want to leave for anybody that might be listening and or watching right now?
I mean, obviously, thankful for you inviting me to be on the podcast and YouTube, and any SaaS companies out there, whether you're remote, non-remote, but you're looking to grow and scale your business, check out SaaStock at SaaStock.com. We have an annual conference in Dublin, which is actually a global event. Whilst we're in Europe, it's not a European SaaS conference, so we have founders and execs and VCs from like almost 50 countries coming to Dublin for the week, for the conference. So that's our flagship. That's the global event. In 2019, we're going to have SaaStock Latam in South America, in Sao Paulo, in April, SaaStock Asia in May, in Hong Kong. Then we're going to have SaaStock East Coast in New York in June, SaaStock West Coast in San Francisco in September, then obviously the Dublin event, and then SaaStock Oceania in Australia. So I think...
You just stressed me out.
Yeah. I'm
not even doing it, and that stressed me out.
It's not a good idea to run that many conferences, but
we'll see how it goes.
We're giving it a go. So we're in 4 continents. Maybe one day we'll do Africa as well. But yeah, so it's definitely a global business.
Cool. Yeah. So if any of you have any questions with regards to SaaS businesses and or how to run them remotely, please ask that question down below in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you really like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. We have a ton of stuff connected to building remote teams and just building technology companies in general. And if you didn't like this video, give it a thumbs down. Vote with your thumbs so that we know whether or not this was a good idea, whether you'd like more of this or whether you don't. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next one.